Alright, now we take a look at the Tales from the Crypt, Bordello of Blood, or, legs. This one wasn't as good. I still thought it was good, especially there was a climax that had me going, yeah, because it was, and he got a lot more titties in this, but I feel like it's the lesser of the two official Tales from the Crypt movies, because, Ritual, I don't know, we'll get to that, but if you count that one, it's not the worst, but, so the story here, it's a vampire movie, and it follows a woman named Catherine, played by Erica Eleniak, who's trying to find her brother, played by Corey Feldman. Yes, Corey Feldman in a vampire movie. So she hires this private investigator named Rafe, who is played by Dennis Miller. She also works for a priest named JC, played by Chris Sarandon, Fright Night. And they discover that there is a brothel underneath a funeral home ran by a queen of vampires named Lilith, played by Angie Everhart. So they've got to stop her, I guess. And right away, this already feels like a lesser film because we don't get the Tales from the Crypt opening. We get random cold open in Mexico, or New Mexico, whatever it is, where you have Phil Fondacaro with a bunch of Mexicans trying to find what they call a treasure. When they get there, though, they find the corpse of Lilith, and Phil Fondacaro takes out this little box that has the 4 pieces of her heart, which he puts together and back in her body, and she is freed. And she kills all the Mexicans. And this turns out to be a story told by a mummy played by William Sadler. Then the Crypt Keeper and him, they're gambling or something, and he cuts up the Crypt Keeper's hand, and the Crypt Keeper starts telling his story, which is a continuation of this story, which is called Bordello of Blood, and there's 2 siblings. Erica Eleniak plays Catherine, Corey Feldman plays Caleb, and Caleb is the typical mid-90s rocker, I'm gonna do what I want person. He goes out with his friends, one of them of which is David Krumholtz, and they meet this guy who is just, words cannot describe. This guy, he's like, I know a place where you can get the best goddamn piece of ass you ever seen. And he talks like this through the whole goddamn movie. It kind of reminds me of, what SNL, the Weekend Update back in the 90s, how Dana Carvey would be the old man character. Back in my day, we didn't have hair dryers. We stuck our head out in the middle of a hurricane. We had a sharp piece of wood through our heads and we liked it. We loved it. Hallelujah. That's what it reminds me of. But, so he tells them, he sends them to the funeral parlor, where Corey Feldman says this line: if one member of the Addams family shows up, I'm out of here. From the same guy who in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 said, you were expecting maybe the Addams family. So was that a nod? I don't know, but they get there, they get to the brothel. We are shown that they're vampires. Lilith kills the friend, eats his heart, because that's what she does, even though vampires don't eat hearts, they just suck blood. But who knows? They don't get much about vampires right in this, and that mostly goes to the twist ending of this film. But We'll get to that. So then we cut to a few days later, and Erica Laniak is, Christine, Catherine, which on the box, and Rafe Gutman, which on Wikipedia is spelled with a C, but in the film, according to the subtitles, it's spelled with a K. But Catherine, she works for the televangelist guy, JC Current, which is Chris Sarandon's character. And she is looking for her brother. The police won't do anything, so she comes across Rafe, who is just sitting there reading a newspaper. And he's like, I can help you find her. Look, Dennis Miller is fine. I was worried, because I'm not the biggest Dennis Miller fan. This first joke was when she says her name like Bordello, Catherine, Mr. Current, and he goes, call me Catherine. Or not Current, Mr. Gutman. He goes, call me Catherine. I'm like, no, that's not funny. So he starts an investigation, even though he's not technically hired by her, and he goes in to look at the funeral parlor where her brother was seen. And he's at this funeral. He meets the guy, this goddamn piece of ass, who is there covering himself with sunblock. I will come back to that at the end, but he's covering himself with sunblock. So we are told that he is not yet finished becoming a vampire. So there's that, but then the end of this film changes that, I guess. So he comes back later that night. He wants to go down, but they won't let him. He does eventually get down there, where he connects the pieces. He finds the little nose ring that Corey Feldman had in his investigation. And so Catherine decides to take the cops. The cops then out Rafe as not having a license, a private investigator license, and she's now all of a sudden doesn't want anything to do with him. There's also this subplot where he has the rarest blood type that she hasn't seen since Ivan the Terrible. That goes nowhere, by the way, because she said, we gotta keep him alive because he has a rare blood type. And then by the climax, she's just like, I'm gonna kill you. And I'm like, wait, what happened to his rare blood type that keeps him alive? I don't know where that, maybe because he killed a bunch of the vampires, but I don't know. So, so of course, it's Dennis Miller. He's got a hit on women, and Catherine doesn't want anything to do with him, which also leans into the twist later. But Angie Everhart, surprisingly, is actually pretty good in this. I know she was sort of a sex symbol back in the day. She's old enough to be my mother. Same thing with Erica Laniak, about the same age as my mother. So it's weird that I'm attracted to both of these women when they are old enough to, in fact, be my mother. Yes. And so they take the cops there, and they've converted it to a regular. They got rid of it, and he's like, "Oh, they knew I was gonna come back here, and they knew, so they're doing a cover up to gaslight me, man." And I'm like, well, if you knew they were gonna do that, why did you bring the cops? It doesn't make any sense other than to pad out this film. So they get a call from Corey Feldman, who says, I need your help. They need to, they have me. I need your help. So they go to this place. And we get the line from Dennis Miller, what was the line? I forgot what it was. He says, why'd your brother pick this place? It's like we're in a bad Tales from the Crypt episode. And I went, no. There's no way that line was written in the script. There's no way that was in the script. That's Dennis Miller ad-libbing. He decided to wing it and say that line, and they decided to keep it in the movie. Let's just keep going. So it's a trap, of course, and Rafe gets... So they do this, they're running from Corey Feldman, and then Erica Lynn and Catherine gets the idea to swing on these chains. She swings across just fine, but then Gutman goes out a window and lands on the cop car. Somehow the cop is there. And I thought, oh, the cop is in on it. He's a vampire, that's why he's not believing anything. But that all changes in the next scene where Rafe wakes up. He is chained to a hospital bed, on his belly, I might add. And Tamra, who was in a scene earlier in which Rafe, scene I forgot to mention, he gets into the brothel earlier in the film, the Bordello, might say, and he seduces this woman, he chains her up, and he escapes, but he leaves his wallet behind, and that's how they'll find him. That's how they find out he has the rare blood type that doesn't go anywhere. Well, she shows up again, and apparently the sun goes through the window and burns her, even though we don't actually see sunlight going through the window. But she dies. And then we cut to the funeral home where Feldman, in a very disturbing scene, is there with Lilith, and they got Catherine strapped to this thing, and she's like, oh, I like these. And it's obviously a body double, even though Erica Liniak isn't a stranger to nudity. I mean, she was a Playboy model, and she was topless in Under Siege, but you could tell it's a model because every time she goes to touch the boobies, the face is covered. I just think it's weird. Did she not want to have that, maybe? She's good with showing them, but she won't. They don't even take it off. They just won't they want to touch them. I don't know. But while she's doing it, and she's like, I like these, but I like this better. And she goes down to, and the whole time Corey Feldman's going, yeah. Dude, I know you're a vampire, but that's your sister, man. But that also leads into the twist later. Gutman arrives, driving through the door, with his vehicle, and the Chris Sarandon's character, Current, J.C. Current, is there, and he has changed his mind, because he was working with Phil Fondacaro and Lilith, and they showed the key. At the beginning, I forgot to mention, they have the key, which doesn't do the same thing it did before, although they do say that it holds her off, and you could also say that vampires are a form of demonic creature. But then it says that it controls her, and she has to do what you say. I'm like, okay, that's different. Also, in one scene it has blood in it, the next scene it's empty. So, I don't know. But Phil Fondacaro smashes it, which means they don't have control of her anymore. And so Current is like, you know what? I want to stop her. So he and Rafe break into the brothel, and they kick ass. They have squirt guns filled with holy water, and they just go to town to the tune of Ballroom Blitz. And this is the best scene in the whole damn movie. They're just going nuts, spraying them with holy water. They're bursting, they're exploding. Fantastic. And they take care of Feldman, and they save Catherine. Now, something I want you to remember about this climax, because it will not make any sense once the twist happens. So, earlier in the film, we are shown that vampires do not appear on film or camera, or cannot be recorded, cannot be in pictures or recorded on film. Just remember that. So they go back to the studio where they're going to apparently tell people about the vampires, I guess. And Catherine is on camera. There's this guy named Jonas is there. He gets killed by Lilith. And Rafe is there, of course. Lilith shows up and is going to kill Catherine. Catherine fights back. Remember that. And then Rafe lasers her, which cuts her heart in four, but as long as it's still in her, it still keeps her alive. And then Catherine stabs her, separating a piece of her heart. Catherine defeats her. Remember that. We then cut to broad fucking daylight. She bursts into flames. She dies, whatever. Broad fucking daylight where they've, completely cremated the body. And he's apparently gonna send a piece of the heart to space. And then we get our bullshit twist. They're in the car and she starts to flirt with him. But she hasn't shown any attention to him. She hasn't shown any attraction to him throughout the film. So he starts to go in for a feel, right? And he pulls up her skirt. And there we see the vampire bites. And she turns into a vampire and fucking kills him. This entire tacked on ending is complete and total bullshit and makes no sense. There are several ways. There are a few ways you can get turned into a vampire. You can drink their blood. You can absorb their blood, I think is another way. But most importantly, you have to be bit on the neck. It's the only way it works. Because it goes right into your jugular and transfers it through. So, yeah, you have to be bit in the neck for it to work. The only reason she put it there is so they can have the fucking twist. And it doesn't make any sense. Also, why was she trying to kill Lilith if she was turned and would thus be one of Lilith's vampire woman slaves? And also, she was in broad daylight. And she says, he's like, oh, what kind of perfume? She's like, it's not perfume, it's sunblock. But sunblock doesn't work if you're a full vampire. It worked on Freaky Dude. Was it Jennings? It worked on Jennings. I think is his name. Jenkins. It worked on Jenkins because he wasn't a full vampire yet. He was slowly turning. Because I don't think she actually wanted him to be one. Because she ended up killing him anyway. Ripping his head off. Which is a pretty cool effect, by the way. But he wasn't a full vampire, which is why the sunblock worked. And he said it was hurting him. She has sunblock on, but she has fangs. She's a full vampire. Sunblock wouldn't work. The only reason they introduced the sunblock thing earlier was so they have a reason to use it for the twist, because it was going to be in broad daylight. Why couldn't it be at night? I don't know. But this ending twist makes no sense. You can't be turned into a vampire unless you're bit in the neck. If she was turned, she would be working for Lilith. And there's no way Lilith wanted to die unless... No, it doesn't make any sense. And must I mind you, she was on camera. We could see her on camera. The twist makes no fucking sense. Just no sense at all. I guarantee you it was tacked on at the end just to give a twist. And they filmed the scene at the brothel with Corey Feldman. Her saying, oh, I like it down here. Separate, along with the twist. To tack on. Like it wasn't in the original script. And they said, oh, we want to add a twist to it. Because it's Tales from the Crypt. And we can do that. I don't know if that's exactly what happened, but that's what it seems like to me. because this twist makes no sense with the rest of the movie, to me, anyway. Other than that one scene and the sunscreen thing. But the sunscreen thing, it's like it was separate. And they're like, oh, they established the sunscreen thing with Jenkins, so we could use that as an excuse why they're in broad daylight, and she does this. But Jenkins wasn't a full vampire, so that's why it worked. But she is a full vampire. She even has fangs. It doesn't make any sense. This movie is cheesy from beginning to end. It's not as good as the last one. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, to be honest. It's not as good as the last one, but it's good fun to just turn your head off, turn your brain off. I wouldn't say it's so bad it's good, because I don't think it's in that category, but it's a fun watch. I do recommend it, but not as much as the first one. So, yeah, it gets a 7 out of 10 for me. So what are your thoughts on Tales from the Crypt, Bordello of Blood? And when it comes low, make sure that... I forgot about the end with the Crypt Keeper, where it turns out he's been playing this kind of game with the mummy, and it's just the mummy's head left. It's nothing special. And then, at the end, they have the nerve to actually play the Tales from the Crypt theme, even though they didn't play it at the beginning. And then it cuts to Ballroom Blitz. But, yeah. So, what are your thoughts on Bordello with Blood? Leave in the comments below. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I've been Scotty, and I'll see you in the next one.